Well, and I think that does actually kind of segue.
I could feel the segue coming because we got kind of edged into cinema a little bit, hadn't we? You know? Yeah. I mean, oh, God, man, this was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This was amazing. I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, I have spoken about it on Hannibal Digested and a couple of other podcasts now. But now that we can,
yes,
that was hard, wasn't it?
Oh boy,
keeping Sturm was a pain in the arse.
Yeah, it was difficult. It was.
I could tell you, it was I tell you, the ones I really struggled to keep it from were Jack and Elliot.
Of course, yeah.
I was sort of like, because I know Jack loves that film. I know Elliot loves that film. And I was sort of like, I mean, I did tell a couple of people who were not involved, you know, it was like, just because I
me too.
You know, it's just had to. It was just one of those things, you know. But yeah, and it was great actually being able to actually like breathe and talk about
wonderful. It. No, absolutely wonderful. And this is about, George and I, a few months ago now, were invited to take part in, Arrow Video, who put out these incredible kind of remastered DVDs, Blu-rays.
They're like bespoke sets on it. Like as DVDs and physical media become rarer, they've cornered this market where they create these collector's items.
Absolutely, yeah. The deluxe kind of version. I mean, basically, you go to Arrow Video if you want to own the best physical media version of whatever movie it is that you're buying. That's what
and not just the movie, but like it's everything. You know, like the Lord. You know how the Lord of the Rings boxed sets, the big extended edition, set they set the high watermark for DVD sets. That's what these guys produce, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like every film they produce, it's like it's hours upon hours upon hours of extra material you're getting here.
Yeah. And the thing about Arrow is that always, I think that, and I don't know if this is explicitly their IP or just the way that they operate, but it feels to me with Arrow they're always trying to give you the definitive edition.
Yes.
To me, it's like Arrow is saying like, you can buy. I mean, for example, the Arrow video version of Robocop, which of course I have the Steelbook Robocop. It's like, if you want to buy Robocop on DVD, I think you can probably get it for a couple of quid now. If you can find it in a second-hand shop, you probably get it for £1 at this point, or a charity shop. But if you want the definitive version of that movie, you go to Arrow and you put down your money and you buy the Blu-ray because it's fully restored. It's a fully 4K restoration. It'll have the 5 or 7.1 surround sound mix that will be beautiful, and it will have everything. Any documentaries that got made, any commentary tracks that have been on previous DVDs, and it will have all of the commentary tracks. And it will probably have a new one.
It'll probably have new stuff as well, right? I mean, they go out of their way, don't they, to like get like not only the people involved with the project, but like even like people who responded to the project, like film critics and reviewers, and even like audience members who were inspired by the films. It's just incredible stuff.
It really is. And what they're producing at the end of the day, as I say, it's a definitive version of the book, but it's also, as you're right, it's a definitive set. It's not just about the movie. It's about, it gives you all of this material surrounding it. They normally come with a booklet as well, that's been really well researched, written about the movie, perhaps about the making of it or whatever. And it's just, they're really, and they're beautiful physical objects as well. I mean, and it's really, and this is, it's high-end stuff. And to me, they're kind of the gold standard. In terms of this kind of thing, and I can't afford them very often, so I only get them when it's a movie I'm in love with.
Yeah,
but if
likewise.
it is a movie you're in love with, this is who you're going to get it from.
This is that you will not get better anywhere, and you will likely never get better again. Quite frankly,
that's right.
It's something very, very special.
Yeah, and that and that is, again, that's their brand, that's their IP, that's where they sit in the marketplace. That's how I suspect they continue as a business, because people know that about them. Because you're right, I mean, physical media sales are basically evaporated. And I think that by the way, I think that model, those are one of the few producers of physical media that are going to survive, for people who have that kind of model, because there will always be people like you and me who are complete fanatics about certain movies and will want to own that particular version.
Just those who like quality products. I mean, that's the other thing.
That's true.
They are just beautiful to have, aren't they? Like aesthetically, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the Steelbook Robocop's got pride of place on my shelf and has done for years. It's a beautiful object, as you say, as well as being, the definitive version of my favorite movie. So it's wonderful. And I remember watching the Blu-ray of that for the first time, and I I had literally never seen the film looking that good, like nowhere near.
Yeah.
I'd only ever seen it on VHS, and then I'd seen it on the original DVD release, which was pretty much just a straight print of the film.
Straight, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've seen it in widescreen because it's from the film print, but I saw detail I'd never seen before. It was absolutely, and the sound quality as well was just incredible. So that's Arrow, and they're like, and I think it's fair to say, like, we're fans of them just as a company, right? As an idea.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
That is like, because it's real. The other thing I like about it is it's clear that these are fellow obsessives.
Yes. Oh my God.
Who care and love this stuff as much as we do, right?
these are cinemaphiles to one, right? The people who make this stuff, they love their cinema.
Yeah, and that comes across. So a few months ago, we got approached by one of the commissioning editors for Arrow, who asked us, who had been listening to this show.
Yes,
ladies and gentlemen,
listening to our podcast.
Listening to what you're hearing right now.
The stuff we kind of do on a whim, as a laugh, really. Right. This is fun. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This is right. I mean, it's something that I've actually said to a few people since the news got out. It's a very strange thing for me to be in a situation where, like, I've always taken the fiction writing incredibly seriously, and for the last 5 years, or 5 or 6 years, I've taken the non-fiction writing incredibly seriously as it built its own audience, and I started to realize, it's something that could potentially be a career path as well, or form part of be part of the mix, not rather than just something to promote my fiction. But this has always been goofing off. This has always been like, I just want to hang out with George for an evening and chat shit. Something I love,
absolutely.
Like that.
This is like, it's a rest period. This is like letting off steam. It's like playing a video game. It's good fun. It's like socializing.
Exactly. And it's not, and that's not to say I don't take it seriously. Of course I do. Like, I'm passionate about it. If we're talking about a book, I've read it before we sit there. Like, I mean, not that.
But we've never sat down and done what like a load of people on YouTube have done, for example, where they've thought, right, how can we make this like a business? How can we, how can we monetize this? How can we get this where we're like reaching thousands of people at once? We've never really sat down and done that. We've just done it as and how, really.
It's for George and I. This is a passion project. This is what we do for fun. It is recreation, and we take it seriously to the degree that we care passionately about the stuff we're talking about.
Absolutely, and don't get me wrong. That's not to say that we don't. I mean, I know that. I'm actually really pleased with the work we put out. I think it's actually really good. I think it's actually pretty damn good. I really think it's kind of unique. Having listened back to some of it, I don't think there's much out there kind of like it.
I think that's right, but I think the reason for that is because I think the things that make it good are the same things that make it the thing that we never thought would make money, right? It's pure passion project. There's no master plan, there's no spreadsheet, there's no schedule.
Agenda.
As you well know, there's no schedule.
Oh my God, no. And we don't have to worry about like not saying certain things so we don't get demonetized, or like the algorithm doesn't push us all the way down to the bottom of the pile or anything like that.
There's no, as you will know hilariously, there's no running time set.
No,
right? So
I still don't know how this fucking thing works. Okay, like the biggest.
In fact, why are you listening to this?
The video that's done the best of all of these was When the Wind Blows. When the Wind Blows, there are thousands of views on that.
Yeah.
There are thousands of views on that. And I don't know what the thing is, why the algorithm likes that video.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? That one clearly bubbled up and surfaced. And
do you know which one it is for the one I do with Jack and Elliot, the Not the Same Log podcast? It was Clash of the Titans.
Oh, really?
I don't know why.
It's interesting.
Clash of the Titans has more views than all the other videos put together.
I mean, I do wonder with When the Wind Blows if it's nothing more simple than the fact that there aren't a huge amount of YouTube videos about that particular thing.
That could be it.
But it is something that's enough in enough people's consciousness that it gets looked for.
That could be it, That could exactly be it.
I bet people put When the Wind Blows as a term in because they want to watch it. I bet people are trying to find it on YouTube. And I bet there just aren't that many videos with that. And then so ours bubbles up. And then enough of those people click on it as a kind of, I wonder what that is.
That must be it, because it is like ridiculously more than almost any other video on this channel.
Yeah, I feel like you've got one of your. I think there's that. I think maybe your original retrospective on
the Clive Barker ones, yes. Because again, I think it may be because what you were talking about. It's because they're rare. People do search for like specific authors like Clive Barker and whatnot, and there are just not that many videos out there. Certainly not like discussion videos or review videos or anything like that. So they tend to get still quite a lot of views coming in.
And then there's some. I think there's some random Transformer review of yours from early on that's got.
Oh my god! When I first started, I was getting. I mean, before YouTube, this is when YouTube was ran by human beings. I mean, can you imagine that? Doesn't that make you feel old? I mean, my god, that was back when there was a star rating system. So videos like people clicked on a star rating. You were, like 1 to 5 stars, and the ones that had the more star ratings got the more views.
Right.
That was the way it worked back then. That was back in the hinterlands. That was like the very primordial days of YouTube.
No, it is kind of, gosh, it was really such a more innocent age.
It was a very different time, I can tell you. It was there was a time, a brief period when I could guarantee at least 2,000 views on my videos.
Right. Yes.
Once upon a time. Those days are long gone.
A somewhat less depressing world than the one we're currently in.
But
but anyway, all of that is a very long-winded way of saying, like, so this was, although again, this is something we enjoy and are passionate about, it is not something I think either of us ever envisaged it ever being any kind of gig or something that would, generate any kind of income or any kind of necessarily any kind of interest beyond fellow fans, which is a wonderful thing, by the way. And we love the comments we get. I love the interactions I get, the messages I get on Facebook every time we post new messages. That's why we do it, and clearly from the pleasure that we get from talking to each other, which I think is the other quality that clearly comes across. Right, we just enjoy each other's company. So it was. I think it was actually a shock. To get a message from Arrow to say, we're putting out a new Hellraiser box set. It's a 4K restoration of the first 4 movies, and we'd really like you and George to do something. Yeah,
right. And like they were so good about it as well. They didn't prescribe anything.
Well,
they didn't say you had to do. Oh, by the way, you've got to do this, and you've got to talk about this, and you've got to talk in a way that would promote this or that. They just said do something.
Yeah. And it was a really collaborative kind of process, talking with their team to figure out what would be a good thing to do. And we kicked a few ideas about, and I think, we talked about, we could have done a commentary track, as some of you will have heard. We have actually done a commentary track for Hellbound.
That was one of the first things we did, wasn't it?
It was, as part of the Watching Robocop series. That's on my feed somewhere in my podcast feed.
It is. And is it on here?
I don't know if it
could be up here. I'm not sure.
If it's not, I'm happy. I can bung you the audio and we'll get.
Oh, if you would, that'd be great. I would love to put that. If it's not up here, I have to have a look and see.
Yeah, I can't remember because I think it was part of it was certainly part of the Watching Robocop, because it was your return visit to Robocop where you picked the movie.
God,
No, that was very early on. But so we talked about a commentary track. We talked about doing some writing as well, of course. We're both essayists, and we have both written about Barker and about the Hellbound in particular, and the Hellraiser franchise in general many times for Ginger Nuts. And, so that was a possibility. But I think we kind of realised relatively early on, we realised that if the reason they'd been attracted to us was these conversations, that it should probably be
one of
these conversations, right, in some form or other. But I can't remember who came up with it, but I think what was really kicked it into another gear was the proposal that we do it face to face.
Face to face, right? I mean that made it something else, didn't it? That made it into like a new experience, for one thing.
Well, this is the thing, because again, and there's no reason at all, dear listener, you should know this, but George and I actually had never met.
Met face to face. We have discussed so much and spent so much like digital time together.
Yeah, quality time together,
but gone so deep. Into so many subjects and like about our lives and our beliefs and perspectives on things, but we'd never actually like met face to face before.
I mean, this is a real behind the curtain thing, I guess. But like, to the extent when I say we've never met face to face, we don't podcast record with the cameras on.
No, right.
So like, the first time I actually saw George speaking it for any length of time was when we recorded the videos for the My Life in Horror handover.
Yeah,
and
right.
That was actually the first time I'd seen George, like, as opposed to a photo on Facebook, seeing George in the flesh, as it were, reading something as a, to camera. That was the first time. So I mean, when I say we've never been face to face, I mean really, really never face to face.
Yeah, outside of like, still photographs.
Yeah, and it became a really attractive idea to just sit in the same room and do this. And then from there, it was a very short jump to, because we were trying to think, like, the challenge I think for me was, as you regular listener will know well, these conversations are hilariously unstructured. I mean, off topic is on brand for us, right? Like,
absolutely. It has become. Let's be honest.
Almost part of the game. Like, at this point,
cutting this one into two. Like that previous, like the intro discussion is going to be one video, and this will be another.
So there is a concern, obviously, that, I mean, yes, we're being hired because they like what we do, and that is part of what we do. But at the same time, I think for both of us, we were conscious that this would be, we'd want to deliver something special. It
would have to be tighter, wouldn't it? It would have to be a little bit more on topic. Because of course there are other considerations here. There's people's time. There's the fact that they were using their own media to record us and whatnot. So there was also that consideration as well. How much space did we physically have on the disc before they would have to say, look, can you draw this to a close now, please?
Yeah. For that matter, how many hours the cameraman's got before they got to go whatever their other job might be. And I think as well, there was a question of like, what do they actually want out of this beyond George and I talking? Like, what do you want?
Yeah, what's the product, right? What is it that what is good material to put on this DVD? And there's also the other consideration as well, which is we are so deeply connected to this film, to Hellbound, and to this franchise, that we wanted to do it right. Yeah, we wanted to give them something. We want to give them bang for their buck. Yeah.
Well, this is it. I mean, I may end up saying this again before we finish, but it's really important to understand. And you listen to this, so I'm sure you do understand. But like, this movie, whenever I was 13, 14 when I saw it, this was a game changer. This was a game changer the way it was a game changer. The things that this movie does in the horror, yes, in terms of its gruesomeness, but also, more importantly, conceptually.
Its ideas,
Yeah, exactly. Like, just blew off so many doors in my young imagination. It was
likewise
a experience. It was right up there with the absolute gold-plated classics like The Thing and and Robocop, movies like that. It was in the pantheon for me.
It remains so. I mean, it's
absolutely.
It's just such an impressive film.
And Hellbound specifically, by the way, as opposed to the first movie, which is a wonderful thing in its own right, but Hellbound specifically for me, because of the age I was when I saw it and the circumstances. If you told that 13-year-old kid that one day he'd be part of the DVD box set release, he'd be part of the Arrow, like a collector's edition, I'm not sure what he would have said, but it would have been a lot of swearing involved in it.
Likewise,
and there wouldn't have been the. So I think for me, I felt kind of a responsibility to that kid.
Yes,
to have landed a gig like this it really is a dream gig.
It's a dream come true, isn't it? I mean, not to wax too cliche, but it absolutely is. This was to be close to this franchise, to be part of it in any tangential way, is a wonderful thing. It's something like like you were saying. It's feeding that child or that teenager who experienced this franchise and was moved by it and informed by it.
Yeah, and it. I mean, speaking personally, it felt like an honor. It genuinely did, because this is it's such a formative and impressive work of art, and to be invited to be part of it in any way, but especially in a way like this, where it's like where you're, I mean, as it turns out, we're going to be on the Hellbound. We are on the Hellbound disc. We're
and like
on the
physically, we're there. It's not just our voices, dear listener. We are. You're going to see us like waxing theatrical here,
and it's just like that is something incredibly special. It just is, and I think you're right. I think we felt a very keen responsibility at that point to do ourselves justice and to do the movie justice, to do its impact justice. And out of the conversation with Arrow, it became clear that what they really wanted from us was to talk about the movie itself, but then use that as a pivot point to talk about Barker. And Barker's influence. Talk as horror writers and also as fans of the horror genre about Barker.
I mean, I remember in conversations with Neil Snowden, one of the things he mentioned was like, we are so many decades on now from the original Hellraiser release, and you know, there have been many DVD sets for this film, more than most people realize. And very often they reproduce the same material, which is the stuff that was shot in the 1980s or in like the early 2000s when the original DVDs were released. They reproduce that material, which is very good. All of it's very good.
Yeah, it is.
But it's, you know, culture has moved on, horror as a genre has moved on, and now there are people like ourselves who are kind of like the inheritors of that legacy, if you like, people who are working in the genre, and they wanted a reflection of that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they you know, and it became apparent that they wanted that, and they wanted as well that fan's eye view. I think that was really important to them. You know, a lot of the people that they've interviewed were people who are older than us and who were directly involved in the creative process, and they are really important interviews. They're really, and I'm looking forwed to seeing them. Like I'm going to be
going to watch every single one of them.
The extras trash for this thing. Man. I'm going to watch it all twice. I'm really excited to see.
I'm going to regress back to when I was a student, and I would spend like more of my student loan than I should on DVDs with commentaries and documentaries and things. Absolutely. And I'm just going to veg. Watch all of them together.
It's going to be amazing. And like, you know, and I think what Arrow was saying was like, we've got all that stuff and that stuff's all brilliant and we're really excited about it. And we also want this. And again, this speaks to what we were talking about earlier with Arrow's mission. Like they want this to be definitive. And so our role, it became clear, was to, you know, with all of that historical contents that will be provided by all these other excellent, you know, very bright voices and people and contributors, our job was to come in and say, okay, and as, if you like, the children of this movie, as the people who saw this as children and have now been influenced by it as adults, what's that like? What's the legacy like? What's the contemporary experience and the contemporary experience of the legacy? What's, you know, how do we see the ripples of Hellbound, both in our own lives and our own works, but also more widely in the genre? Like, how do we see it continuing to play out? And that's a fucking fantastic brief. You know, that's really cool. It's
wonderful, isn't it? And also, I mean, like there was a little bit of apprehension, of course, because again, there's that desire to fulfill that brief, to do it justice. But also, I mean, like, we didn't really know at that point, because we didn't actually rehearse this or anything. We didn't really, outside of like some very brief discussions, we didn't really, because we thought, we know from the way we work, and I certainly know this, that it would have killed it. If we were working to like a format, if we had a script, or even I think a very sort of like structure, it probably wouldn't have worked. We're pantsers in this regard, aren't we? But this is what we do, you know? And that's how it works. It develops naturally. So I think going in, there was a little bit of apprehension because we just didn't know if it would work in that format.
No, that's right. And you add to that, of course, the added, I mean, you know, mainly pleasure, but also there's a little bit of tension about doing it face to face for the first time.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, also, there's lots of other factors. We were shipped out to Hereford. You know, we were in a different place. We'd spent the night before. We'd had a fair few drinks the night before, I think it's fair to say. We'd
had a couple, yeah.
A couple, nice. Yeah. I mean, I do recall getting the dirty looks in the hotel bar. It's like closing.
That's time. Right. They thought they were getting an early night.
And then there was us.
The writers arrived and he's ordered whiskey. Oh dear.
Yeah. Oh dear. So there were lots of factors involved, right? I mean, it felt like being swept up, didn't it? You know, because we traveled as well. You know, we traveled a reasonable distance, unfamiliar environs, meeting new people, all of that stuff, which is like, sort of like emotionally exhausting. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as well, it's probably worth mentioning that what we eventually hit on as the idea. So having realised that what they want us to talk about is firstly the movie itself, and then secondly talk about its legacy, and then thirdly pivot to Barker and Barker as a writer. Okay, that's a brief we can follow, right? And if you've heard our shows about, but like you could probably piece together some of those elements from various shows we've done down the years, talking about this movie, talking about Barker in general and his work, and you can see how we could kind of work again. Completely unscripted, but you can see how, as a regular listener, how we would probably think, yeah, we can do that, right? We can have that conversation and that will work. But the idea that the other thing that we hit on that I think I'm really, really happy about, because I think it really sort of set it to alive, was we hit on the idea of recording the conversation as soon as possible as we could after watching the restoration on a cinema screen, because it turned out neither of us had seen this film in the cinema, right?
I hadn't seen any Hellraiser films at the cinema. I can't believe that. To be honest, we were too young, weren't we? Of course we were.
Yeah, we're too young, and I don't live in a city big enough to have those kind of revival cinemas that do those classics.
Likewise.
That's it. Yeah.
Wow. But no, that was a game changer. That was a game changer. And
so that's why they shipped us out to Hereford to do it, because there was an independent cinema there that they had a relationship with that would do a screening for us. So we got to do that, and I've got to say, I mean, this will come across in the extra itself if you watch the recording, but like that, we should talk a little bit about that as an experience.
It was unlike anything. This is going to sound totally hyperbolic, but it was unlike anything I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was all of the associations with that film. I mean, that's certainly part of it, but like it was all the other stuff, the context, the experience of being there in Hereford, of having had the night before, of meeting one another, and just so many other things made that experience almost like euphoric. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing we haven't talked about this, but I guess it is public information, and I guess it is relevant, so I'm happy to go into it a little bit. But like, my personal circumstances at the time of the recording were very difficult. What did we record? May, I think we recorded third or fourth week in May, something like that. On the 30th of April, I was with my father when he was diagnosed with terminal stage 4 bowel cancer, which had spread throughout his entire body, including to his brain. And I had learned, he actually hadn't, because he refused a prognosis, but I had heard his prognosis, and he had basically somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks to live. And it was just an incredible shock to the system. It was, I mean, time effectively kind of stood still for me for the first 2 weeks while he was in hospital. It just felt like one long day, because I'd accompanied him. He'd had a collapse at home, and finally we'd managed to get him in the ambulance and get him to the hospital, and that's kicked off the process that led to the identification of the illness and the diagnosis. But no clue beforehand, by the way. This is, so he went from thinking he maybe had IBS and a bit of dizziness to not very long at all. And then it was, there's a million and one things you end up having to do under those circumstances. And I mean, when he first went in, candidly, we weren't sure he was going to get out again. He did in the event. He made it home, and he had a very happy, genuinely a very happy last 6 weeks in the house he'd lived most of his life, and was the last half of his life anyway. And it was as good as such a thing can ever be. But it was in the middle of all of that, and the conversation started happening about the dates, and we started realizing kind of we were running out of time a little bit as well.
Of course, because I mean, like there was going to be a hard deadline for this thing.
Right.
Obviously,
they
had
well, they've got production deadlines, they've got a Gantt chart, and this has to be done before you can start anything with physical production and blah blah blah. You can see, you understand how this stuff fits together. And everyone involved with the project was like, look, don't worry about it, it's fine, you've got to deal with what's important right now. But the thing was, before the diagnosis, I had talked with my father about this potential project happening, because we had been talking about it since last year. It'd been
it's been battered around for a long while, hasn't it?
And he knew about it, and I realized at a certain point that it would be a matter of profound regret, not just for me, but for him, if I didn't do it. And it would have actually, I know how this sounds, but I actually genuinely believe it kind of would have been a bit selfish of me to not do it, because I think my father and I had a incredibly close relationship. I was very, very lucky. We were very similar people in a lot of ways, and we there were ways in which he knew me on an instinctive level that I don't think anyone else ever could, because of that combination of whatever component is genetic and biological, and because of having very similar temperaments, and because he was my father and we had a long relationship that involved a lot of conversations over decades and decades. All of those things feed into that level of intimacy.
Yeah.
And also, I had at various points in my teenage years given him fairly serious cause for concern about whether or not I was going to be okay. And when I told him about it before the diagnosis, he talked about how important it was. And I think he kind of grasped that before I did. I was just high on the fact of it. You know? For me, it was the thrill of, as we both talked about, it was the thrill of being part of fucking Hellraiser. I'm going to be I'm going to be in a Hellraiser box set. I mean, like, I could fucking die happy. Do you know what I mean? That kind
our names and our faces are going to be on a DVD, and it's going to be like associated with Pete Atkins and Clive Barr.
Do you know what I mean? Like fucking Doug Bradley. Like, come on, man. Like, what do you want out of life as
Claire Higgins and Ken Cranham?
Like, as a fan, what more could you possibly fucking want out of life than that? Like, that is just
amazing.
like,
it's amazing.
But for him, it was more than that. For him, it was a signifier of like it was a career milestone for me, for my career as a writer, as a critic.
It feels that way, doesn't it? It feels like, okay, you are part of this club now. You're part of this culture, this family, whatever it is.
Yeah. And it is a profound honor, and it's a profound joy, but it's also, and I think he got that before I did. I think he understood that before I did, perhaps because of his own career path and the way his life had been. Like, he spotted it as a moment. So I think when we had those conversations, as much as it was initially like, look, I'm just going to have to figure out what's going on, I worked out quite early on that that I wanted to do it still, and B, that I kind of should. That it was kind of an important thing to do. And I remember sitting in the waiting room in the hospital rehearsing what I was going to say to Dad, trying to figure out the way I wanted to line the sentences up to kind of lay the groundwork for the conversation about, I guess basically really asking him if it would be okay for me to go. And I got about halfway through the first sentence and he said, "You must go." Must go. Life goes on. You have to go to this. And that was it. There was no debate. There was no anything. So, everything we've talked about already was there, the terms of the weight of feeling that weight of responsibility to ourselves, and actually to our audience, to you, to the
people, to you guys, right?
Who are gonna, whether or not you pick up the DVD itself, the fact that I feel that, our job was to represent fandom. Partly that was part of what we were supposed to do there. We were supposed to be
almost representing
exactly the voice of those, all of you who sat down and watched Hellbound at whatever age you were and had your mind absolutely fucking blown by it. That was our gig, was to go in there and be the voice of that experience. That's what they didn't have. That's what they had, all the industry professionals, but they didn't have us. And by the way, again, hats off to Arrow for deciding that was a voice they wanted to include. That's
oh my God, for making that decision. How fantastic is that?
Irrespective of picking us, that was a brilliant decision, and something that I hope they continue to do, because I think that's just a wonderful thing to decide to include. So, but in addition to that, I also had this, it was really curious. It felt like a little couple, because it was about 2 days in the end. We traveled down the night before. It felt like a kind of little bubble reality for me, because I was, back home, my head was completely consumed
Of
with
course.
my father's health condition and the day-to-day reality of managing the visiting hours. He had 2 till 8. My entire day revolved around 2 till 8 and making sure that someone was in the room with him for every single minute of 2 till 8. And most of the time that would have been me or my sister, but getting people in, but also trying to get, a million and one things, power and attorney sorted out, conversations with, how mobile does he have to be to get home? Do we need to modify the house? Who do I need to talk to? There's just, it's endless, the kind of list of things you end up having to do in those circumstances. So having been not just given permission, but kind of instructed to go, I also, it was so weird. I remember getting the train. It was a beautiful train journey out to Hereford. The last leg of that journey, the Birmingham to Hereford train.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Isn't it lovely? The Malvern Hills and everything. Yeah. It's beautiful.
And it really felt like, I was kind of going into a kind of wind and all those watership down. I don't know, like, I was entering a different mode, like a different.
Totally, yeah. That whole experience. Obviously, my own experience is different because of context and circumstance, but I know exactly what you mean. There was that feeling, wasn't there, where on the train journey, and we arrived independently, by the way, but there was the feeling of being in like another realm, like a bubble reality of some description, and just an entirely new and other context.
Yeah, and I think for me, just and I wouldn't have predicted necessarily that I'd have been able to do it, but I found that, and I'm sure that the physical distance from where everything was going on helped, and the physical reality being so different. But I just found that my mind just changed gears. I just went into a different mode. I just flipped into this mode, our mode, the conversational and the passionate fan, and it was an incredible moment to have, and it was an incredible privilege. Yeah. Especially in the middle of everything else that was going on, to be able to step into this space for 48 hours and do something completely different, completely divorced from that, but also something that I cared about as passionately as I do this movie, and as I do about Barker as an artist.
That's the other thing, right? It's this film, the people involved, but also, like Barker, who created the Hellraiser franchise, and has been significant to both of us in different ways.
Absolutely, yeah. No, he is a Mount Rushmore writer. Yeah. For me, Barker. He's one of those. Yeah. It's Barker and King, and I'm not sure who the other two faces are, but those two. Like, that's, they are he is just, he's one of those writers that you think when you grow up you want to be that good, and you're never gonna be that good.
Absolutely. It's the guy. I know for me, it's the guy who opened it up. I know without my experience of Barker, I would just be another working class kid. Right. I might be slightly more well read than most, but that's it. Yeah. That would be it. I would not be a writer. I would not be who I am now. Without that,
right. And so I think it was fascinating, and so for me there was an enormous amount of relief associated with it, as well as the sense of responsibility, because it was just it was just a total change. And I was kind of, again, I was kind of instructed, like, just mute the fucking group chats. If there's an emergency, we'll phone you, but if we don't phone you, just focus. Yeah. And of course it was my first time meeting you, and that was a really wonderful thing.
It was so breezy and easy and fun, wasn't it? We got on very well indeed. It was great fun.
Yeah, and it was just like, honestly, the conversation wasn't a huge amount different from what you guys hear when you hear it. It was similar to that, especially the first 2 hours of this one. That was pretty much.
It was pretty much this, wasn't it? Well lubricated by the end of the evening by gins and whiskies,
and one of the best goddamn bacon cheeseburgers I've ever eaten in my life.
Wow, that was filth, wasn't it? That was pure filth. It was brilliant.
Oh god, well, you can cut this out if you want, but I'm much so I don't sleep very well in hotel rooms, and this was no exception. And because we'd had drinks, I did end up having to wake up in the middle of the night to pee. and I have to report, in all candor, my pee actually did smell of bacon. That's how amazing that burger was. That has never happened to me before. I probably never will again. That moment where you're simultaneously like thinking that's probably not good, but there's this very strange undercurrent. There's just a slight feeling of pride that makes no sense whatsoever, because you should not be proud. You should just be probably afraid.
Oh my God. I was fully expecting to be awoken by a ghost or something in that.
Oh God, yeah, the hotel was extraordinary, wasn't it?
The
It was,
Green Dragon in Hereford. That place is incredible.
Yeah.
It's the setting of an M.R. James ghost story, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
Like, it still has a lot of the original Victorian fixtures. I don't know about your room, Kit, but the window in my room, I don't know what they're called, those old Victorian windows where the latch goes and you have to lift it up and then latch it again. So it could easily come down on your head if you're like sticking your head out. And dear listener, I shit you not. I texted Kit this, by the way, before he arrived. The room they put me in, and this was nothing to do with me. It was nothing to do with Arrow. It's just the way it worked out. Was room 217.
Yeah, that was. We should have known everything was going to work out all right.
Right. For God's sake,
you can't get a much better omen than that, can you?
What the hell?
Anyway, so the point is, like, so we met and it was all awesome, but then 10 a.m. the next day we meet up and go to we take our cases to this indie cinema, this wonderful indie cinema. It's
all like, I mean, we had breakfast and we had that lull where we had breakfast and we had coffees and, you know, we sort of got ourselves working again. We got ourselves functioning again. And then after that, it was just a rush, wasn't it? It was just like being swept up and being, you almost, by the end of the entire experience, I think I didn't come out of the mode I was in until I was on the damn train.
No, same. Absolutely the same. Yeah. No, it was absolutely incredible. But the experience, so, you know, that's a hell of a lot of backstory to explain. But like, that's the context for me sitting down at about 10:30 in the morning, which is, you know, in my ideal world, I might not actually normally be awake by then. Just to be clear about this, listeners. That's like, I'm a kind of 4 till 12 guy when it comes to sleeping. That's my ideal. Like, if I didn't have a job or any other responsibilities, that's probably would be my default sleep pattern. So, you know, 10:30 is pushing it. To be sitting in a cinema, you know, fully clothed and bathed and fed, and about to watch, you know, absolutely one of the, never mind anything else, genuinely one of the scariest fucking horror movies I have ever seen in my life. One of the scariest movies I can tolerate.
Like, just it's one of those films that's kind of fetid, isn't it? It's kind of rancid, you know? It feels spiritually soiled, you know. There's something really unpleasant about it, and it's brilliant in that regard. It's wonderful. And also, we're seeing it for the first time on the big screen, and we're alone in the cinema, you know. It's us, and that's it.
No, that's the thing. And, you know, the lights go down and the New Line logo comes up, and for me, I think one of the impulses I felt, and this builds on what you were saying, George, like, for me, Hellbound is one of those movies that also has a sense of the forbidden about it. There is something about it that forbidden and foreboding. There is a certain amount there's a level of on which it is sinister that I think a lot of horror movies try for and fail to reach, that it manages effortlessly.
It feels like, it feels occult almost, doesn't it? Like you are engaging in some sort of forbidden rite or practice that's going to open you up to whatever's going on. It's so weird.
It's extraordinary. And I think for me, I got that logo gives me a fresh one every time I see it anyway. But
it's associative, isn't it? Like, of course I positively associate that with Hellraiser. So it's like, it's like whenever I see, like, I'm trying to think of an example, but like the film company that produced the Blair Witch Project, whenever I see that, that's what it just comes back to me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I get it with Orion, because of Robocop is the same thing. When I see that Orion logo, it's a big thing for him. But the New Line, and then there was a thing about, so obviously it was forbidden when I saw it because I was 13 and it had an 18 certificate.
Yes.
So it's always in that sense been, and I think there was something cross-wired in my brain maybe, because there was a sense of fear of being in a cinema and watching it, because it's always been something I've seen on a screen. And actually thinking about it, normally, perhaps apart from the first viewing, something I've normally watched on my own. Yeah. Watching it with another person felt a bit weird.
It's odd, isn't it? Because, like, it feels I mean, this is going to sound really weird, but it feels almost like watching pornography with another person. It's got that kind of...
Well, it's very personal and it's very visceral. And those are two things that it has in common with pornography. It's not pornography, but it has those qualities in common.
And you get that sort of feedback loop happening, don't you, where you're feeding off of one another's reactions, and it becomes just so much more profound. Yeah,
and I think and also just it is anyway, but obviously on the big screen this quality is exacerbated. It is actually overwhelming.
Oh yeah. That's what got me this time, actually. And I had noticed it, but just not to the same degree before. Like, it reaches a pitch, and then it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop.
No.
It doesn't follow those rules that so many horror films do, where like they will cushion it. They will give you those moments of relief to let you catch your breath again, or to let you come down from the emotion. This does not do it. It just keeps going. And that high point of emotion that it reaches is really high and intense. It's like it touches a raw nerve, like a dentist touching a raw nerve in your mouth, you know?
Yeah.
And it just holding it there, holding that hook there. And it's like, oh my God, it's amazing.
It is like that. I actually think, I mean, or maybe it's even, it's almost even more so. It's like when you're touching the raw nerve yourself, because of course we're choosing to be in the room. We could look away any fucking time we want, but for some reason we are compelled, as sometimes one is with a sore tooth, to keep prodding it with our and that's what we're doing. We're sat there, why am I mean, I think we said that at one point, maybe I can't remember, it's a bit of a blur, but we made like, why are we doing this?
We did say that at one point. It was the Browning moment.
Which is
obviously,
fucking hell.
That is so much longer for some when it's on the big screen.
That's right. It's already far too long, and I think part of it is just, again, you kind of can't look away because the screen fills your entire field of vision.
Yeah.
So there is an element. I mean, you can shut your eyes, I suppose, but I mean, who's going to do that?
Who's going to do that, right?
But there is an element of compulsion. Not coercion's too strong a word, but there, you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of there. It's in front of you. That's, if your eyes are open, you are going to see what's going on. That's
absolutely.
It.
I mean, it
in
is.
Your face.
It's almost like a Ludovico technique thing, isn't it? It's clamping your eyes open.
Yeah. Again, to be crystal clear, I'm speaking metaphorically. We chose to be there. We chose to put ourselves through it. It's not.
Absolutely.
It isn't. We're talking about how it felt in the moment, and it was that's an experience that we voluntarily undertook.
Absolutely, it was an assault. It was incredible. I'd never really felt anything like it in the cinema before.
No, me either. And I mean, I haven't seen a lot of horror at the cinema in any case, but frankly, I've never seen any horror movie of that quality in the cinema. I think that's the thing.
The only other thing I can think of that's equivalent in terms of the effect it had on me was the Blair Witch Project. For me,
okay, that's
the only other one I can think of in the.
I never saw that at the cinema, unfortunately. Although I have to say, I think that's one of the few horror movies that functions so well as a home release.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It really does. Bringing it into the home, making it intimate. Yeah, it does.
Because it feels like, because it's found footage, it feels like almost VHS quality anyway. It's got that kind of vibe. So,
you brought the forbidden thing home as well, right? You brought it into your house.
Exactly. I mean, not to go, but I mean, that's again something I love about the Cloverfield, a film I feel slightly underrated, is it has that quality, just in terms of the found footage and the way it's used in that movie. I think it's very intelligent. But so to be in the cinema, and I think again it's that, because part of the reason I love Hellbound as much as it is, I obviously, when I view it now as an adult, I do see it with adult eyes, and I do appreciate things about it I didn't appreciate as a 13-year-old. However, at the same time that's happening, part of me does regress to being the 13-year-old.
Yeah.
That 13-year-old just surfaces again and experiences it all over again, and I get to kind of commune with them, which I think is actually a wonderful thing that art can do. I think that's one of the incredibly powerful things that truly good art can do, and reconnect you with parts of yourself from the past. And I think that's a really, I mean, that if art had no other point than that would be reason enough for art to exist, frankly.
Absolutely.
I think that's an incredibly powerful thing that we don't think about enough when it comes to it. So So, and again, because of that 13-year-old surfaces like, what am I doing in a fucking cinema watching this? You know what I mean? Like, what? This is the wrong environment. This is not. So there's an element of unease there as well. It's just feeling like this is not.
It's
right.
almost like incongruity, isn't it? Like this is wrong. This is not the right context for this.
Exactly. It's like, it's the nightmares of turning up to school naked or whatever. It's a similar vibe. Like, this is, like, there's something wrong here. And of course that's underlined by the fact that there's a lot of things in the movie that are very, very just wrong. Like,
awful, right? Just
that should not be happening.
Brilliant. So, I mean, brilliant, transgressive, wonderful, but so repulsive and disturbing and unpleasant.
It genuinely is. I mean, it's one of those films that is right up on my personal limit taste. Like, I know there is more extreme horror cinema than that out there, and I frankly just can't. And again, I no judgment for people who do. It's not. This is an aesthetic thing on my part.
Yeah, it's not a moral judgment.
I just can't handle it. It's not
my thing.
And I'm not speaking to the quality of it at all. It may be I'm sure it is. I mean, there's the guy did, what's his name, Alex? Oh, I forgot his name. The guy did Film Gutter for Ginger Nuts Horror. Is it Alex Davis? He absolutely convinced me beyond reasonable doubt that extreme cinema has some, as well as some crap, as any genre, has some incredible art. And I believe it's just, when something's not for you and it's not for me, and that's it. Neither proud nor ashamed, just noting it. So there is Hellraiser to, Hellbound always feels like a limit case for me. And so
what a one, I mean, bloody hell, this goes to some places, doesn't
it? Exactly. You are right up against it. And honestly, I think it's funny as I talk about it now, I realise, like, I think part of the reason that I can stomach Hellbound is because the ideas are so big as well.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it operates on a very particular level, doesn't it? It's not like a lot of extreme cinematic horror, which is brutally materialist and real.
Exactly.
This is a fairy tale. It's a dark, morbid, twisted nightmare fairy tale.
Well, it's a Grimm's fairy tale, right? It's a Grimm's fairy tale that hasn't been Disneyfied. It's going back to what fairy tales actually were once upon a time. This is ugly slippers. The ugly sisters cutting their own heels or toes off, trying to get them in the slipper. This is that kind of shit. You know what I mean? This is, the witch getting thrown in the fire by the kids. This is fucking. This is what fairy tales were once upon a time.
Yeah, when they were originally penned, right?
Exactly. This is gruesome. This is bloody, and this is and it's done with relatively modern cinematic effects and all the skill, the incredible skill and talent of the effects team on this
time round. I mean, I've always been impressed by this film in terms of its effects, because I think they are amazing. I love the physical effects in this film. I love them to bits. Seeing them on the big screen was another thing entirely. It was another experience. I mean, it's your life has taken a strange turn when you can make an immediate comparison between all of the flayed people you've ever seen before. But this has the
what the hell
best...
is wrong with this, George?
I know, right? What? Exactly. This has the best skinless person makeup I have ever seen in my life in anything, bar nothing. There is nothing as good as this.
I think it's quite a long way to second place as well, actually. I mean, it's something else.
It just looks. I mean, to me, I don't know whether it just looks real.
Yeah,
to me it looks real. It looks like, for all the world, they've dropped a camera into some other reality where it's possible for skinless people to wander around and talk, drink wine, and film them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's extraordinary. And I think, and I think you're right. I think there's something about seeing that. And again, it's the restoration, which I hadn't seen, so there was a level of detail and clarity in the images that I hadn't.
And oh my god.
Yes, and I think we appreciate the effects work even more, because sometimes, actually, again, it's worth talking about. Sometimes a restoration doesn't do the original effects any favours.
It really doesn't. It shows up the flaws a lot of the time, doesn't it? I mean,
there's if some of the restoration on some of the, I understand. I haven't picked them up myself, but I've spoken to some Who fans who've picked up some of the restorations of, they've been reissuing the seasons on Blu-rays, and apparently, like, sometimes, it doesn't with Who Effects, sometimes soft focus is probably better.
Like, yep, absolutely.
This probably gives your imagination a bit of space to kind of,
I always think of like the restorations of the original Disney films, the old Disney films, like Snow White. If you get like the present day restorations of those films, you can see things because they're all hand animated. Obviously, every cell is hand animated. You can see things like fingerprints on cells and stuff like that. And I actually love that. I think that's really charming. I think that's really beautiful myself. But
sometimes it can highlight flaws you didn't want to see. But in this particular case, as you say, I mean, for me, the Skinner Studio, I was just
mesmerized
all over again. Just
completely mesmerized.
Absolutely awestruck. Genuinely awestruck by it. And again, on two levels, and that's the fascinating part. There's the film nerd part of my brain going, holy shit, look how good that is. Look how clear that is. Look how it's dripping. Look how the muscles move.
Right, it looks real.
How the fuck? So there's that, and then there's the 13-year-old kid just watching Hellbound going like, fuck!
Yeah.
Fuck! You know, like over and over again. And it's a absolutely wonderful experience. And all of that meant that when we did come to sit down and record,
well, we didn't, did we? For the longest time, I remember pacing around that room.
Well, they had to set up, so it took what was it, like 45 minutes maybe set up once we got out to set. I couldn't sit down. No,
I couldn't sit down. I was like in this agitated state of mind where I was pacing around and twitching and sort of talking, sometimes to myself and sometimes to you know.
No, it was great, and I kind of went almost not quite mute, but I went very insular. I was just processing. I was just trying to. I mean, you know, I'd respond if you spoke to me, but most of the time my mind was just kind of. And it was an amazing feeling. I was just racing through what I'd seen, but I wasn't. It's odd. I wasn't consciously making any attempt whatsoever to categorize or to analyze
or to articulate or anything. No,
I was just.
None of that was there.
I was just kind of trying to fix the experience as best I could, trying to make sense of it, trying to remember the physical experience of it as much as anything else, and try and just kind of absorb it and be present, you know, be in the moment. That was it. Just seen it, which was not difficult because I had just seen it, and fuck me, man.
I think that was what made it what it was. I think in the end, that's what made it so. What followed so very successful because we just didn't need to do anything. We didn't need to consciously do anything. We tapped into that emotion, and it just came out.
And it just meant the movie was just right there for both of us. It was almost, you know, playing behind our eyes when we started talking. And I think that was just, so that decision was, I think, in retrospect, that was kind of maybe the crucial decision.
I think if we ever do anything like this again, whether it's like for a horror con, which I you know, by the way, I think we should maybe get in touch with some of the horror cons and whatnot. And maybe you know, pitch this as a thing to do, because I think it'd be great. That's got a must. We must sit and watch the film first.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that came into my head that I think would be amazing to do would be to do it with a live audience at a screening. Like actually watch the movie together and then just get a couple of chairs on the front of the screen.
Drag them up on front of the screen and sort of then
we'll just have a chat about it. I think that would be amazing fun.
And I think I do have a feeling that like the slightly more extreme films like Hellraiser, like The Thing, maybe something like Cronenberg's The Fly, I think would be an amazing one. I think they would do very well.
I might have to throw in a vote for Robocop as well, but sure.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we have precedent for that one, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, just again, because another one I still haven't seen on the big screen. I think that would be incredible.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, you've got to do that at some point.
I feel like I do.
Absolutely have to do that at some point.
I feel a bit of a fraud that I haven't, to be honest. And it's starting to be a bit of a worry. But I'll get to it. But and it was because that energy just came like flowing out as soon as the camera started rolling, and it was. I was about to say it was effortless. That's not true. I was conscious I was working very hard, and I was conscious you were as well.
Yeah.
But we were operating at a very high level, but we had that energy at our backs. You know what I mean? We had the wind in our sails, and I think for me, the fact of being face to face, it turned out made it easier because
actually it did.
Yeah, because we could give each other visual as well as verbal clues, and obviously, we've recorded so many conversations now. We're very good now at that kind of tennis game of finding,
definitely, yeah.
And batting ideas back and forth. But it's so much easier when you're face to face.
It is, and it worked so well. It was just so effortless, and unlike these conversations, which are, because they're so much more casual, we were really focused. We hit everything, and in short order as well.
Oh, we did it. I was so impressed. I mean, as I say, we discussed the three talking points we basically had were start with the movie itself and having just come out of watching the restoration, talk about that, talk about the movie in general, maybe talk a bit about the franchise, pivot to childhood experiences of the movie and what that was like being a lifelong fan, effectively a lifelong fan of Hellbound, right? What does that mean? And then from there pivoting to Barker. And I remember we were talking, and the only time we stopped was very briefly. We just started to pivot away from directly talking about the movie to talking about childhood and talking about those experiences. And the director said, you've done about 45 minutes. So if we're looking at 90, you're looking at hitting the second half. And we had. That was the second half of the conversation that we just started. And that was extraordinary to me because, again, we didn't have a clock. We weren't running off the clock at that point.
Nope.
And again, as you know, dear listener, these conversations when we're doing it in this format run hilariously long.
Absolutely, yeah, and also minimal direction as well. I mean, I know from talking to Jonathan, who was directing us, that a lot of the time when they do these things, because of course, they're often dealing with people who are not used to talking on screen or to camera or anything like that there has to be a little bit more direction a lot of the time. They have to stop them sort of spiraling out of context or out of control or veering into areas that might not be that interesting or whatever. But we were fine. We just let it roll, right?
No, absolutely. And it was very interesting, the conversation. I mean, obviously if you want to hear the actual conversation, go and buy the DVD for God's sake.
Absolutely. Please do.
Keep our own business and anyway, for fuck's sake, it's the Hellbound. It's the Hellraiser 4 disc. It's never going to look better than it looks in this. And
absolutely not.
The collection is beautiful. I mean, it's
we
a
look
beautiful.
Great too, by the way.
Good.
They made us look good on that documentary.
I mean, to be fair, George, you do look good. They made me look good. You already. I mean, you had a head start on that one. I got to be honest. But anyway,
well, the vain queer guy in me will, concede to that.
You're a good-looking man, George. It's just a fact. Just live with it, okay?
I have been told by a few straight cis friends that, I'm not queer, but if I was, I would.
You're a good-looking man. But anyway, but yeah, it was, for me, what was interesting about it as an experience was, I mean, as I said, I was going to say effortless. That's wrong. There was effort. It was concentration. It was very focused. It was high energy, but it was. There was a flow to it, and
it felt like performing, didn't it? I know you've trod the boards a couple of times, and so have I, and it felt to me like giving a rendition. Like sifting, almost like something without a script, just doing something off the cuff, some sort of piece of art, some piece of experimental theatre that you just.
Yeah, it had a bit of that vibe. But I mean, obviously, it was improvised; it wasn't scripted. But I think, as well, for me, what was fascinating was there was a quality to it that was it was, in some senses, it was almost like a greatest hits.
Yes.
Because we did rattle through a bunch of things, obviously that we've talked about before. When we talk about Hellbound, we talk about Barker, we talk about this and that. So there were points in the conversation where we were probably repeating things that you've heard us say on various shows at various times in different formulation and with different emphases. But it was there. Also, especially the first sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, it was very much our kind of immediate response to literally what we'd just seen. So focused on some specific scenes, and then we focused on. But what impressed me was how naturally the flow evolved from doing that, and gradually as we'd done that, talking about specific scenes and so forth, naturally we started spreading out to talking about themes and wider concerns within the movie, and the kind of the structure of the film and the structure of the storytelling and the intricacy of it, and that naturally led to talking about the franchise, which naturally led to talking about the flow of it was just, again, considering it was unscripted. And I mean, we've had the practice.
Yeah, definitely.
We talk a lot to each other. But I was still impressed by, for me, it was how we managed to compress, what's been made. I reckon we've probably got like maybe 12 to 14 hours of Barker and Hellraiser conversation on tape now between us, right?
Yeah,
that might be a conservative,
if not
estimate,
more, to be honest. I think it's actually more than that, to be honest.
Right. And we rattled through this, and by the way, this is another thing I'm very proud of. The final edit is 80 minutes long. We spoke for 90 minutes.
Yeah,
that's how tight we were.
It was pretty good, and it felt good, didn't it? It felt right.
So good. Yeah.
When we finished, that's what got me. It was the ending, because it was so perfect. We both stopped at the same time, and we both turned to Jonathan, and that's it.
We got it. Yeah, that was really, and that I got to be honest, that felt kind of magical to me.
It did. That felt really good. There was there was no attempt or no inclination to sort of drag it out further, or to like get another point in, it just felt like we'd done it. Like we'd hit the beats, we'd hit the points, and we'd done it well. And
for me, it felt like so in that sense, what it felt almost like was a distillation of what we do here. And just, I was so proud of that. I was so proud of the way we hit that. And also, as I say, by the fact that there was just very little need to cut much of it, because it all was relevant and it flowed naturally one into the next. And there was no need really to chop much of that up. That's great. And it was a wonderful feeling to be part of. It was an extraordinary
whole experience, to be honest. Yeah. I would hold that up as one of the experiences, certainly of like the last few decades of my life. It was brilliant. Yeah. It was just so, everything about it. It was just going on the journey and knowing that we were doing that, and meeting you was great. Yeah. Obviously, likewise. Getting to spend time with you and with Jonathan, and talking shop with Jonathan, somebody who knows his cinema. Bloody hell!
Oh, that was one. Actually, let's be explicit about that. Jonathan was just a consummate professional,
as a host, and as I mean, actually, one of the things that did shock me. I don't know why I had it in my head. Well, this is a DVD extra. It's not going to be that high tech. It's not. They're going to put us. They're going to put us on a table with a recorder, and they'll get us to chat, and that'll be it. Oh no, this was like a set. Right. This was like a film set. It was lit properly. It was considered. There were multiple cameras. We were mic'd properly. They took the time. Jonathan set up like this table that had accoutrement, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it took so much care with it, and
much care.
And a consummate professional, and just a hell of a nice guy too.
Brilliant,
apart from that, just a real joy. And as you say, like a real cinephile. We had a wonderful, really spirited conversation the night before getting into it about.
I'll bet. I mean, he strikes me as the kind of guy we could probably stay up into the wee hours if you weren't doing anything. Busy,
no, absolutely. He was a delight and just wonderful company. And and in addition to being absolutely consummate professional, who did and who put together as well an incredible edit, because as much as I say, 90 minutes into 80, there's not a lot of work to do there, thankfully, because we've done our job. But still, when you watch it, I mean, that was the thing. I don't know about for you, but for me, like seeing it cut together with the footage, and I was just like wow.
I don't know why. I didn't expect it to be like that.
Right.
I don't know what I expected in my head, to be perfect, but I did not expect it to look that good and to sound that good and to just be so much fun to watch. I was like, brilliant. Oh my God.
I mean, I put it on for my wife, and we sat there watching it, and she turned to me after 10 minutes and she actually said, "This is like a proper bit of telly." This is like an actual, like, this is like actually watching something on. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
That the joy of making something that good.
Yeah.
It kind of, it really does make you want to do it again, doesn't it? It makes you want to like operate on that level again.
Such a thrill. And to be working, and again, just like, we didn't talk about any of that. That's all him. That's Jonathan.
That's Jonathan, right?
Intelligent bit of to understand, like, oh, this is where I cut away to that. This is where I stay with them. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, one of the bits that really hit me, just like, you made a reference to Nightbreed, and suddenly, bam, there's a clip of Nightbreed playing, and I was like, fuck, that's so cool, man. That is so cool.
It just, I don't know. There's something about it that it doesn't feel like us. Do you know what I mean? For me, it doesn't feel like me. It's like I'm watching a DVD extra myself, and this is some, it's that part of it is that imposter syndrome, isn't it? It's that thing of, well, what am I doing there? Why am I sort of expostulating about Hellraiser on the DVD and whatnot? But no, it's great. It feels. I'm genuinely proud of this. I am genuinely proud of this.
I'm so proud of it. I think I love how, because again, and as much as I said earlier, it was in some ways it was a greatest hits conversation, and it absolutely was. And again, I'm proud of that. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm proud of that because, as I say, I think for me, what I was impressed by is how we distilled so much thought and conversation into this. Not just distilled it down, but created effectively a kind of narrative flow to the conversation, just by knowing each other well enough and knowing the subject well enough. That I can't, like, there's things you don't know for sure you're capable of until after you've done them, and this is one of those for me. And I think one of the things I've taken away from it is it's been a huge confidence boost for me.
Yes, so totally, because like, we were extemporizing the whole time. I mean, we were just talking off the cuff.
And that's the other thing I wanted to pivot to. As much as it was a greatest hits conversation, there are moments, and you'll see them if you watch the DVD, where certainly, I mean, speak personally, you'll see moments where I'm looking up and to the left as I'm talking, and that is me literally speaking as I'm thinking, because George has said something and it's made me respond. It's made me think of something I haven't thought of before, and I am struggling to make sure I'm going to articulate it clearly and express what I'm trying to say. So it was greatest hits, but it was also absolutely 100% a real conversation. It was a real thing, like these, where we hit off each other, we spark off, we hear ideas, we respond. And that is such, for me, that is such a thrill to see that process, to have that immortalized on film, us doing that. And being able to look at it and just be like, it's real.
We did that, right?
That is what we do.
And it has opened up an almost like a new vista in a way. It has like a new. It's given this a whole new aspect. I feel it makes it feel. Like you said, it makes us feel much more confident. For one thing, it makes me feel like we're doing something worthwhile.
Yep, absolutely.
Which is nice, and it's elevated it somehow. It's elevated it.
Absolutely is. And I do think in that sense it was an elevated version of what we do on this podcast. And that's not, I mean that in no way to denigrate this podcast, because I think they're different medium, they're different formats, they have different strengths. And I think I love how conversational these are. I love how long they run. I love the way we don't so much end them as stop. I love all of that about them. Because this is what we're here, right? Because again, to go back to where we started, we do this for fun. This is for fundamentally, we do this because we love it. We love talking to each other about this shit, and we love talking about the stuff we love and trying to figure out why we love it. That's the essence of what we do. But to see it operating on that level, in that mode, with that level of professional support behind it on the production side, right? So to be supported by someone who clearly cares as much about this stuff as we do as well. And to see, Jonathan's response to our passion in the way he edited it and put it together. And it just feels like that is something where, because you hear all kinds of horror stories, especially about film and television. I'm sure there are a lot of times when it doesn't go well, but this was one of those for me, this was one of those projects, one of those moments where you're one is enormously privileged to have everything just fucking go right,
just work. It's
clicked, and you and I were both on point. We were on top of our fucking game. We were doing what we've done very well for a number of years, and doing it with the adrenaline of the moment and the energy of the film behind us, and the pressure in a good way of working with a professional director who we wanted to impress, and a company we wanted to impress, who we, who do things that, we love, right? Who put out stuff.
Totally.
All of that is there. And I think I'm just so happy that we didn't just do ourselves justice. I really do feel like we hit another level.
Yeah, I think so.
At the moment, it felt to me like, holy fucking shit, this is it just felt good.
It's good. It's good material. We produce something, I think, really good there. I really do, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. So grateful to be able to, to kind of stretch our legs a little bit, spread our wings a little bit, and show people that we can do this.
No, I agree, and as well, I think for me, the thing that makes me happiest about it is that it comes from a place of completely sincere passion. One of the things I've realized more and more, one of the reasons I have a real discomfort with calling myself a critic, even though I write a lot of what most people would call critical analysis of pop culture, whether it's movies or music, but the stuff I write about, or novels, the stuff I write about, the My Life in Horror essays are very personal, but they are also in part critical analysis. And I've done reviews and I do other pieces as well. The reason the word critic is one that I shy away from and feel difficult about is I find that there are dominant schools of criticism, I think, currently in the wider kind of culture that seem almost like they make a fetish out of finding flaws.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's that kind of it's like early YouTube style criticism. Yeah.
There's that, but I was actually thinking, I even think in print, I think there's a problem with traditional print media journalism criticism. I think a lot of that stuff, a lot of theatre critics seem to fundamentally not like theatre. A lot of movie critics seem very sniffy about at least popcorn cinema. A lot of music critics seem to really fucking hate quite a lot of music.
Yeah, right.
And in particular, quite a lot of the music they write about. And you kind of, that's a sad place to be.
It really is, isn't it?
Paid a very decent, enough money that you don't want to stop doing it, but you're having to write about shit you don't even like. And I think, even when it's well-meaning, I think there's almost a desire for a critic to find flaw in order to prove to the audience that they have critical faculties, right?
Yeah,
that they are. And I just, what I love about what we do, the reason we do this, the reason I've never thought about this as being anything that you could call work, even though it is a body of work at this stage, is because this is about love, it's about passion.
Primarily, we exclaim upon the things that inspire us primarily, don't we?
Exactly.
Primarily. Yeah. And the fact that we can do it at such length and to such a degree demonstrates the lie of what you were referencing earlier, isn't it? That to be a critic, you have to be negative. You have to demonstrate that you're somehow better than the material,
Yeah. Because, for me, I realised after a few years of doing it, because I'm very slow, but after a few years of My Life in Horror, I realised, the purpose of that project for me was, it actually does serve the same. It does serve the same function as a lot of my fiction does. A lot of times when I'm writing a fictional story, I'm trying to figure out why something is bothering me about the world. Something is bothering me about the way people interact, or something that people do or can do, and I need to figure out why. And anytime I find myself reading a news story and thinking, I cannot imagine how or why someone would ... There's a fairly good chance that's going to become a story at some point. Yeah. Because I need to find out. I need to work it out. And I trust to my abilities of empathy that I'm going to be able to unpick it. So it's not the only inspiration, but it's a thread. It's there in a lot of stuff I've written, and it's something that I'm sure will keep coming back. And the non-fiction, that's almost what all of it's about. When I sat down to write about whatever it was, Superman 3 or the Wasps, the Headless Children, or even the fucking Lost Boys, the question I was asking myself every time when I sat down was why?
Yeah.
I know how this makes me feel. Why does it make me feel that? And it's that exploration of why that formed the backbone of those essays. And that's what these conversations are for me. You love Imagica. I love Imagica. Yeah. Why? Why do we love it? And it turns out we can talk for hours and hours and hours about why we love it. And we're not sitting there fanboying. We are fucking digging.
Yeah, we're digging. We're
into this work. We're digging into ourselves.
Right?
Right, exactly.
It's archaeological almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're bringing our own positionality. We're owning our positionality to the text, and we're figuring out how it, where it resonates with us, where it's dissonant with us. We're looking at, and we're thinking about authorial intent and all of that stuff. All of the stuff that involves the tools of criticism that people talk about are in there. But the reason I shy away from calling it criticism, and I prefer the term appreciation, is because we're not talking about this stuff to try and firstly, we're not trying to sell this stuff, but secondly, we're not trying to tell you that it's good or that it isn't. Most of the stuff, almost all the stuff we talked about, we think it's good. That's a given. What we're trying to figure out is why is it good.
There are very few examples of the opposite, aren't there, of things that were actually...
Yeah, which is because it's not our thing. And what I like about that is, in the process of exploring why is it good, you end up exploring the flaws anyway. You'll have
absolutely. It's part of the project, isn't it? I mean, maybe it's just like a one-off show. We have done a few things. We did The Lost Boys, obviously, but maybe we should do, just as a one-off show, maybe we should pick something we absolutely fucking despise.
I know you wanted. We've talked about this privately. I know you floated a couple of times about doing 12 rules, and it's just me having to fucking read it. I just don't. I would have to read it. To be intellectually honest, I would have to read it. And
I don't think I could inflict that on you, to be honest, because it is a waste of your time.
Have you actually read?
And that's the biggest. Oh yeah, I've read it.
Oh God. Well, now I feel guilty.
No, honestly,
I feel the moral responsibility.
No, don't.
Well, look, because here's the thing.
It's a waste of your time.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
That is.
I do feel like quite strongly. Obviously recent experiences have taught me life is actually horrendously short, and no one knows how long it's going to be, and I just don't know
if I want to spend your time
a few precious hours on it. But
read a digest of it. Read some of the the crib notes that are online.
I just feel like,
or just don't bother, because it's garbage. I mean, it is hot garbage.
The only thing that might make me do it is I currently do have a worst book of all time, and it is so. And it was because of another podcast. We did a podcast on this is called Wrong with Authority a few years ago, and it was Jack Graham and Daniel Harper of I Don't Speak German, and James Murphy, who's of Pex Lives, and he's also doing my Bruce Springsteen project. And the four of us talked about movies that were based in history, movies based on real events, and we talk about the movie and then we talk about the actual history. And it started as a shabcast. We did Nixon and JFK. And then we realized this was actually a formula that would work really well for a series, and it ran for I can't remember, we did maybe a dozen episodes of it. Coordinating 4 people turns out kind of a nightmare, especially when one of them's in a radically different time zone, and you've all got jobs, but we did record a few, and I'm proud of it. But we did The Wolf of Wall Street, and because I'd picked it, I felt honor bound to actually read the books, because there's 2 of them. Actually, there's 3, but I couldn't face it. But a third one, my excuse for not reading the third one was it came out after the movie, and it was a cash-in on the movie, and it was actually Jordan Belfort saying, "Here's how you can be a shit-hot businessman." Which, when you think about that movie coming out, when you think about him bringing out that book after a movie has come out which shows the story of his life is being such a terrible and corrupt businessman that he ends up in jail, and he then decides that what he needs to do is bring out a book to tell you how to be a good, which of course sold millions of copies, so what the fuck do I know? But well, the world is doomed because of capitalism. That's what tells me. But the point is, I read The Wolf of Wall Street and I read Catch You, The Wolf of Wall Street, which are Jordan Belfort's 2 books. And I will say, I will give him credit for exactly one thing. I do not believe either of those books were ghostwritten. I don't think any ghostwriter on earth could possibly write as badly as that man writes. But those 2 books combined is absolutely hands down the single most unpleasant reading experience of my entire life.
That's really interesting. I'm trying to think of what it could be for me. Atlas Shrugged, maybe.
I tell you what. The thing about those books is that sorry, you've triggered my PTSD now. You just have to, I'll keep it short. But no, the thing is, seriously, the thing about those books is it is exactly like being at a party and you go to the kitchen because you're trying to avoid people, but you got to go to the party because you like someone, and then you get cornered by the drunkest, most obnoxious person in the entire fucking building.
Yeah.
And they're one of those people who is completely obnoxious and completely humorless.
Invade your body space, all that stuff.
Yeah. But the crucial thing is they think they are incredibly charismatic and very, very funny.
Yeah.
And they are neither of those things. And they proceed to basically give you their life story, which is what these two books are. And it is just like, it is just... I tell you what, though, it's oddly readable. There is a compelling quality to it because you're like, how can someone be this awful and not realize they're this awful? How can someone be this awful and not only not die of shame, but decide that they should put this in a book for everyone to... It's fucking wild. And genuinely, and I will say this, if you want a psychological insight into the people who are, accessories after the fact for the death of planet Earth, yeah, actually, it's quite helpful. Like as a psychological, because this is how their minds.
This is how they think, right? This is how
or actually don't think. But it's, and actually, it might make it very much of a piece with Peterson's word salad. So maybe I don't know. Maybe I should give it a go. But yeah, that. But
it sounds more coherent than what Peterson wrote.
Then I'm telling it wrong. It's. I mean, it is a life story. It does start with his childhood and end with him in jail, but spoilers. But fuck me, no, it's I just, oh Jesus, what a fucking experience. And I'm actually glad I did it. I'm glad I've read them genuinely, but I will never read them again. I even, it's the only time I've nearly thrown a book away. Because that would be like, for me, that's almost impossible. But I couldn't.
There is one I threw away. That was the Da Vinci Code. It's fucking awful.
That's fair. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Garbage. I mean, not in the same way that The Wolf of Wall Street is, and not for the same reasons. Like it's not ethically objectionable or anything like that. It's just bullshit. Bad. It's just bad. It's just really, 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 really awful.
But I realised I was stuck because I couldn't throw it away because I can't throw books away. But I also I couldn't take them to a charity shop because I couldn't risk inflicting
it on someone else.
So they're actually still on my bookshelf, which is a bit upsetting, really. I think I should move to a box in the loft.
To be fair, I do still have most of Ayn Rand's books around here, and they're just tosh on every level.
Problematic, I think.
Problematic is one word. Like cultural poison.
Yeah,
is another word for them. Possibly some of the most damaging books ever released, ever.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that's fundamentally why we don't talk about the bad shit, because by and large, with those handful of exceptions, we don't fucking read the bad shit or watch the bad shit. Because kids, I mean, why would you want to do that with your time?
Exactly. And also, I mean, there's just that thing of I think just genuinely wanting to share. Yeah. I don't generally want to talk about the stuff I don't like. Not usually, anyway. It's very rare.
Yeah, and I think as well, like when I don't like something, I know why I don't like it. There's not much mystery there.
It's very clear, right? Whereas when you like something, it's a bit more mysterious, isn't it? It's a bit more difficult to get a bead on.
Well, especially I think when you love something. I think that's the thing. When you really, really
why
love
does it
something,
speak to you? What is it about it that is so resonant with your soul, with who you are?
Because it's such a visceral feeling, I think, to love something like a piece of art, to feel it resonating with you that strongly. Like it does, and I think it rewards unpicking. And I also think, for me, it's the joy of, integral to that is the joy of conversation. Because I know, my preparation for any of these is literally just read the book or watch the film. That's it. That's my prep.
Yep, that's mostly it.
So it's freshly in my head. But that's and I know that's what you've done as well. Because. Part of the fun for me is the dialogue. I learn things about the book, the film, whatever it is, from you, and that sparks off
vice versa, right?
Right, but also, and then that sparks off further thoughts in me that connects to ideas or observations I had, or contradicts them, or leads me in a different direction. And suddenly, I'm seeing it in a whole new light. You know what I mean? And I think that pleasure as well of joint exploration. Because we have similarities, but we have differences as well, and we have different perspectives. And I think, that I get so much out of that. And the bottom line is, I really feel like in an ideal world, like if we lived locally, we'd probably just sit in a pub and have these conversations,
like
right?
forever. I think it would. I think it would probably be deleterious to our writing.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't. It would be like that kid I got separated from at school. It's like, you two are always talking. It's like, yeah, we're having fun. Yeah, okay, but you're literally not going to learn anything if you're sat next to that kid.
I have that feeling. I really do.
Yeah,
I mean, I felt it most keenly. I felt it most keenly when we did Exquisite Corpse.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because that is such a gay. It's a gay guy's book.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's written by a gay guy. It is aimed at gay guys.
It's entirely and exclusively populated by gay guys. Right. They're the only characters in the actual story. Yeah.
So to get your response to that as a straight cis guy was so interesting. It was so interesting, and to understand how you connected to that. Yeah.
Sure.
You know, it's just fascinating to me. It was really.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because I understand, like intellectually, I understand that Exquisite Corpse is a lot of things, right? As we talked about on that show, but it is, of course, like a kind of
manifesto. It's almost manifesto like, isn't it? It's an angry book. It's a queer rage story.
I think it's obviously both a profoundly queer book. Like in its DNA and its bones, it is a queer story, a queer book, a queer novel. But it is also like a kind of, for me, probably, I mean, I don't know enough about the genre, but I suspect it's probably a foundational queer horror text.
Yeah,
right?
I should think so.
It almost has to be. And it might be the foundational queer extreme horror text.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only thing I can think of that's equivalent is Sacrament.
Right. Okay. Barker's the only other artist I think that we could have coming anywhere near that. Well, certainly that springs immediately to my mind. Again, historically, talking about the age in which it was written, that's important. I'm talking about today, but
contextually,
and that's not to say those artists weren't trying to produce that work at that point. This is about the market and what people are allowed to be published. I'm just to be crystal clear about what I'm saying and not saying.
It's just so weird that Exquisite Corpse came out of that era, and it's like, how did that happen?
Absolutely incredible. Well, because it hews so closely and tightly to the societal themes that were happening in that moment that even a straight cis guy like me could pick it up and be like, holy fucking shit, man.
Yeah, right.
This is, but what it spoke to was rage, and I understood rage. I understand rage. My rage. You
had almost like your identifying character in that, of course, which was
that's right. Yeah, and no, that's right. That's the guy I identified with, the guy who had HIV and who was just on a fucking tear against the society that had, that didn't give a fuck because it was just gay men dying. And I think, and I identified very strongly with that anger. And when I say that, I don't mean in the sense of identified with it, obviously, as someone who was directly impacted by that injustice, but identified with it as someone for whom that kind of injustice is infuriating. As someone for whom, for whatever reason, find myself in a constant state of fury and despair at the level of injustice in the world that comes from the most base ignorance, discrimination, bullshit, hatred about meaningless distinctions between how people choose to behave or what people like, for fuck's sake. Like, and it just that's just who I am. That's just something that's there for me. And again, that's not me. I'm not, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I understand what it felt like or what it feels like. I don't, because I am who I am and I have the privileges I have. But I find that sincere expressions of rage at injustice in art,
they speak to you.
Speak to me on speak to me on an incredibly deep level. And that's the kind of stuff that's why I love the music I love. That's why, that's why Rage Against the Machine probably I think as the most important band, maybe not my favorite, but the most important band of my life. Hearing that band at 13 or 14 and what it did for me for music, in terms of exposing me to hip hop as a form, making me understand that rap was as meaningful a way of delivering lyrics as singing was, marrying an unapologetic hip hop rapper to an incredible metal band who were producing sounds like nobody else was producing. You know, a band that invented a genre of music and also ended up being the high tide mark at the same time. Yeah, I mean, that's just like,
it's pretty good, isn't it?
10 years later, the record labels invent new metal, and nothing that came out of the new metal movement can hold a fucking candle to what Rage Against the Machine did in 1991.
In 91,
on their own.
Yeah. Oh my god.
That fucking thing burned down the world. That's
Jesus.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, and again, you come back with Our Eyes, and the lyrics are all about all kinds of stuff that's incredibly relevant and resonant to our current crisis. They talk about capitalism and the evil and the, you know, the perils of it, and they talk about, you know, social injustice and racism and all this kind of stuff, and structural racism, and you know, and it's just, you know, that stuff always resonates with me, and it always has, and I hope it always will, because I think for me, you know, that
you've so got to read Sacrament, man.
I know.
Got to. I mean, like, I think if there's one that will overshadow, I mean, it's going to be like Weave World, you know, where you'll acknowledge that it's not as big or ambitious in scope, but I think it will speak to you in a way that those books don't. Yeah. You know?
But no, I mean,
I think you'll really go for that one. In fact, there are certain stories coming up in the Books of Blood that I think you're going to be like, wow.
Yeah. You know? And I mean, look, you know, saying that, for my part, to pick up on a more recent show we did, but we talked about, you know, we recently talked about In the Hills of Cities, and and funnily enough, I've recorded another show about that. I can't talk too much about it yet because it's still in development, but I'm doing another show, and with another horror author, and we talked about Hills of Cities for one of those episodes, and it's very interesting talking to people, because obviously I read that like last week, basically. You know, I read that very, very recently, and it is fucking knockout. It's everything everyone said it was. But obviously, hearing you, and on that podcast, you and David, you know, David as a bisexual man, talking about the experience of reading that story as a, you know, as a teenager, right? As someone like going through puberty, and just seeing in text a frank, actually not super explicit, but a frank, and, you know, quite romantic sex scene between two men being treated just as an entirely normal thing. Just as a human thing that happens.
That's one of the things we kind of struggle with, to be honest, because it is so normal to us.
Of course. But seeing it, but both of you talking about how seeing that experience reflected in art was so resonant.
Oh, so meaningful. Yeah.
And for me, it's just, I can't, like, that's the stuff I get that I like. There's no way on my own reading that story I could possibly get to that experience.
Of course, because
my positionality is like alien to that.
Of course, and
I'm not reading in the 80s. I'm not. You know, for me, it's just. I mean, you know, for me as a.
Well, your sexuality is catered to, right? It's there. It's in everything.
Just a bit. Yeah,
it's in everything.
I mean,
you know. I
mean, to be fair, I could make some quite pointed critiques about the predominance of certain roles within that I think are overrepresented. And stuff that I would personally be happier seeing a bit more and a lot fucking less of.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. It's not a fucking panacea, but no, of course, that's not. That's a whole galaxy of difference from. I've never seen the way I feel depicted anywhere,
or like talked about. Like just. Amazing experience. It's hard to. It's hard to fathom.
Right. So to hear you and David talk about, and again, I got a lot out of the story on my own back. It was an amazing thing, and I liked being able to contribute the stuff I could and talk about the stuff I did. But obviously, I get so much insight out of that conversation at that point. I learned so much about, you know, and it. We were talking earlier about the importance of history. Like, you make history real by stories, right? At the end of the day, it's always like the personal is political, right? That's the key to so much of this stuff. It's how you unlock a lot of this stuff for most people. And you can't beat hearing those fucking stories and just realizing, like, because it, you know, like if I'd really thought about it in the abstract, I might have thought, oh yes, gosh, in 1984 that might have been a little bit controversial. But that's different from being like, no, I was fucking 13 and I'd never read anything like this in my life,
like ever. It was
ever.
Explosive, and
because its own terms, it's exciting for the same reason that a sex scene is exciting to anyone who's going through puberty and is trying to learn about sex and sexuality. But then you think it's the first time you've read a sex scene that you feel like you could have been in.
Yes, yes, and and for those of us who were not lucky enough to understand our own sexuality, it may have been that point. It may have been the turning point, right?
Well, yeah, and interestingly as well, and talking about David, and again, this other show which will come out at some point, you'll hear there's also an interesting sort of there's an interesting other layer to that, which is the bisexual man's experience.
Yeah, right.
Which is, there are similarities to your experience, but there are differences too.
But there are significant differences. Yeah.
Like, oh,
significant differenence, which are again terminally unexplored.
Yeah, exactly.
Terminally underrepresented, and then you can go through the entire rainbow. I mean, if you want to talk about underrepresented, the asexual experience.
Oh my God!
Fucking hell!
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting one, actually, isn't it? Because I was about to say, I should think about this a little bit. Obviously, there's a very okay. I acknowledge that there is a significant fan movement, whatever you want to call it, around queering in relation to Sherlock Holmes. That's fine. In fact, I'll go further. I support that. If that is something you enjoy, great stuff. I am not speaking against you when I say this, but I do think it's interesting that in the original, certainly in the text, if not the subtext, in the text of the Holmes stories, Holmes is kind of asexual.
He's kind of your classic asexual as well, isn't he? That's what's so interesting about him. I think if that is kind of where I would want to go with him.
Yeah, and personally, and again, I know not everyone agrees with this interpretation, and I'm not arguing with people who disagree with me. This is my personal opinion. I'm not putting this forward as holy writ. I feel that one of the few aspects of the classic Who series that I miss was what felt to me to be a more explicit's the wrong word, but the fact that to me it was obvious that the Doctor was asexual for the original classic series run.
I mean, for the same reasons. He's almost like he is a very similar archetype to Holmes.
Yeah. And I just really liked that about the character. I liked that aspect of it where it was just like that was, or maybe aromantic, I don't know, but like there was just that thing of like this, this character just doesn't have a sex drive, is not interested in sex. That is not, or if they are, it's not anything that we would comprehend. It's not. Yeah, and it's certainly not part of the stories. It's just.
I think it's very, and given the nature of the character, it's actually really problematic when it is introduced, especially when it's in reference to humans and like 19-year-old humans. It's kind of like, I
don't know how Rusty got that one. I mean, Rusty's a genius. He can do anything. But yeah, I mean, look, and again, I want to be clear about this. I'm not trying to pick a fight with anyone that feels differently, right? No. It's fine. If you enjoy the romantic Who stuff, good for you. I don't mind it, actually. Always, it's whatever. It
depends on how it manifests for me.
Of course it does.
It all depends on how it manifests. I think it can work.
It always anything like that depends on how well it's done. It always will, right? You can do it badly or you can do it well. But I'm not against it. And look, that's the beauty of Who, right? There's 50 fucking years, nearly 60 fucking years now, the stories to pick from. Like if there'll always be an area you don't like and an area you like more and whatever. That's it's all real, it's all Who, and if you love it, you love it, and that's great. And I'm not but it just, for me personally, I liked that aspect of the character. I mean, talking about that, I mean, I think that I don't know, one of the things that I find that I really enjoy in fiction that I don't see as much of as I'd like lately, it was a very traditional part of fiction back in the day. Probably, ironically, when it was done at the time, it probably was. A lot of times it was sublimated queer fiction. It was the only way that gay men in particular could express themselves. But I love those deeply loving platonic male relationships. Like I find they were really important to me as a kid, and I find they're important to me as an adult.
The sort of Sam and Frodo kind of relationship.
Mole and Rat.
Mole and Rat is a very good one.
Obviously, Holmes and Watson, and again, crystal clear here. if you have queer interpretation of those and that makes you happy, I'm not saying that they're not valid. They are valid interpretations of those texts. You could read them in those ways. You absolutely can. I enjoy, for me, I enjoy that. I mean, I like the ambiguity. I like that they're flexible. I like that the texts are well written enough that you can interpret them in different ways. But for me, I find those platonic but deeply held, expressions of male love really powerful. I find them
and they are increasingly rare, aren't they? And that by the way, that's not because of the pervasiveness of queer fiction. That's actually because of that strange shift towards like hyper masculine homophobia, and misogyny that we're experiencing.
It's reactionary hyper masculinity and toxic masculinity, actually. And that action movie hero fucking persona that doesn't need anybody that's tough, wisecracking fucking dickhead who fucking shoots grenades. It's that guy, who doesn't exist. It's that guy who kills a skyscraper full of terrorists and never gets PTSD. It's that guy who, and again, I like action movies. It's fun to watch, but it's a fucking fantasy. Don't take that as a model for like a real actual human being, because you will end up as a fucking basket case.
Yeah, you'll end up as a lunatic. Yeah, you will end up doing something terrible.
But I think it's really, because for me as a kid, I mean, I was lucky in how I was raised, and I'm very well aware of that. But like, I didn't have any problem from quite a young age realizing that I loved some of my male friends, and I knew that loving them didn't make me gay, because I've known since the age of 6 that I definitely like women, like, because I just did, because I think most people do. I think that's how, so, and I just couldn't tell them. Because it would be,
so
you can't, and it's taken me, like, I mean, now I'm an adult, I'm all right with it, because it's like, if you don't like it, fuck you. But
I never gave fucking shit.
No, but you know what I mean. But like, for me, it's like,
But then again, it's that strange positionality again, isn't it? Like, gay queer kids, we have queer people in general. This is one of the areas where we do have some more freedom than straight in many respects, certainly within the prescriptions of narrative.
Sure,
we're free to actually say that to people, to anyone we like, really.
And it is, I mean, I remember when I first started encountering sort of wider queer culture through friends of my mum's, like, that was an aspect of it that really appealed to me. You know what I mean? Like, that was something where I felt, oh god, that's so much healthier than the fucking bullshit I have to deal with.
Don't get me wrong, there's problems within, like, within our communities and cultures as well. There absolutely are, and there always will be, because we're human, right? But that is one of the areas where I think it's so fascinating to me. It's stuff like the sex positivity of the queer community, for example. Like, from the outside, a lot of the neuroses and restrictions regarding just sex in straight culture, in heteronormative culture, are fucking insane.
Yeah, it's very, very strange.
Are fucking insane.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's very odd to gay people. It really is.
I mean, I will say it is very odd to some straight people too. Just for the record.
I've no doubt.
Some of us do, like, look at our fellow straights and like, you guys are right, because
is there something wrong with you?
This doesn't look.
Who hurt you?
Do you know what I mean? Like, well, I know the answer to that, but like, it is a weird one, and as I say, just for me, I love the. I mean, weirdly, really watered shit down this time. It took me for some reason, my head keeps coding Hazel as female, even though all of the rabbits are male. But like, I think it's just the name. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
Right.
But remembering, as I am forced to periodically by the text, because it becomes a part of the plot, that these rabbits are all male.
Yeah.
And again, just thinking about, like, this is such a great depiction of, like, this is like the opposite. This is like the anti-Lord of the Flies. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
positive masculinity, right?
Really? Like, even like Bigwig, who is in some ways like the kind of alpha male stereotype. Bigwig's a fucking mensch.
He's great. He is the one you rely on, right? He's the positive, the big daddy figure. Yeah.
But the thing about Bigwig that makes him brilliant is he genuinely does embed some of those, like, really the best of those positive qualities. He is courageous, he is brave, he is loyal, but also, like, he completely without rancor understands his limitations as well. And when it comes to planning, he defers to the people who know what they're doing. and when he's asked for his opinion on stuff that he knows about, he gives it. You know, and all that kind of, and it's just like, but there's no, what I love about him is it doesn't diminish his confidence at all, because he knows what he's fucking good at, and he knows his role, and he knows his role is valued, and he doesn't feel the need to fucking bully anyone or be the boss or any of that shit, because he knows the stuff he's good at, and he knows what he is, and
it's fascinating to come across those characters, isn't it? Because they're so rare.
I mean, he's almost Bigwig. So I was just, as I say, I realized Bigwig's almost like the original himbo, right?
Yeah, he's the sort of hero rabbit, isn't he? You know, he's the big one that all the females would go for.
But think about how, like, in a like a modern action movie, the equivalent of that character. But then think about how Bigwig is again cooperation. He's part of a team. Yeah. He's a necessary component, but he's not the fucking focus, the be all, the end all, the alpha and the omega. You know, he's not. That's the thing. It's like one man alone.
No. He fulfills his role
exactly, but he's valued, and he values the others as well, because they do things he can't, and they work in. And it's just like, in the hands of a less skilled storyteller, it would be the Adventures of Bigwig, but it fucking isn't, because he's a brilliant part of the story. Mm-hmm. He's one of the heroes of the story, but so is Hazel, and so is Fiver. You know what I mean? And so is Strawberry, and all these other like rabbit. They all have their roles and their parts and the stuff that they do. And I think, and again, you know, the positive portrayals of just like masculine, you know, male camaraderie, male friendship, male love. Because I do think part of the fucking poison that we've got at the moment in straight male culture, whatever the fuck that even means, is like, is that kind of it does come back to that deep rooted like playground homophobia.
Oh my god, I'm seeing some really weird expressions of it lately as well, like more extreme than I've ever seen, where you've got guys worrying about like, does this make me gay? And it's something like like, no.
I mean, my favorite one on that was always like, my favorite one on that is always like, whenever I see that, here's what oh god, do I actually want to say this? Fuck it, I bet it's not beer. I'm going to say it. Whenever I see that, here's where my mind goes at that point. Does this make me gay? I think about it. I like what I want to say at that guy. I want to sit there and say like, okay, have you ever actually had a wank?
Right. Yeah.
Because if you have,
right.
I'm just saying, like, you've pleasured a man. I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe chill the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? Just maybe like, do you think that was bad or wrong, or?
And like, it's not that, like, it matters. Like, that's what really gets me. Yeah. It's like, who cares? It's like,
but that's it, isn't it? It's identity. It
is, isn't it? It's identity, and that precious way that we're conditioned to regard identity as the be all and end all. It has to operate within these parameters, and it has to be certain and absolute. And anything that threatens it is evil, or corrosive, or poisonous. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. You know, I mean. You look at things like studies into human sexuality, and you realize that like the labels we do come up with, although they are important in certain communal ways, are actually massively inadequate. But like on an individual level, they're massively inadequate. Like, you know, I identify as gay because it's easier for me on a tribal and communal level.
Sure.
It tells people the baseline.
The baseline.
Right. But it doesn't tell you anything really. No. It's like self-describing as an atheist.
Yeah.
It tells you what you don't believe. It doesn't tell you what you do believe.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. And absolutely. And I think as well, like, I mean, you're absolutely right when it comes to sexuality, and when it comes to sexual behavior, like within whatever, you know, straight, gay, bisexual, pansexual, you know, there's a incredible spectrum of activity. And an incredible spectrum of things that individual people will like or not like.
Right.
You know, and it's so much more complex than just the anatomy involved.
And it's so weird, like, we've known for decades in psychological study that people who identify as straight often have the odd gay crush, and even often the odd gay affair. Same goes for gay people. We often have, like, once in a blue moon, there will be someone of the opposite sex who really attracts us, and sometimes we act on it, you know. just happens.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the way we are.
I mean, the religion thing's interesting because I remember, like, I mean, I don't do this anymore because I'm I've grown up a bit, but I did go through a phase where I would aggressively insist that almost everyone was agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
There were almost no atheists and there were almost no true believers. Actually, almost everybody was agnostic. Because actually, if you really get down to brass tacks, most of us don't know, and we fucking know we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when it comes to religion, I mean, if you really want to get into the underpinning philosophy of it, like, all religions by their nature are unfalsifiable. Now, that does mean you can reject them immediately because they're asserted without evidence. So yes, you can dismiss them. That's fine. It does also, however, unfalsifiable doesn't just mean that. You know what I mean? It does also mean, like, they might be fucking right, but you'll never know, and you'll never be able to prove it. Now, what you choose to do with that information is up to you, right? That's fine. But actually, that's the fucking agnostic position.
Yeah.
That's the actual agnostic position, is you can't know. Not only you don't know, I don't know, you don't fucking know either. Nobody fucking does, and no one ever fucking will.
Exactly.
And that's actually just a statement of fact. That's just like, for like 99, like, you have extreme, like, there'll be extreme, like, no, I actually talk to God every day, or no, I personally killed God, whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
But those are tiny slivers, tiny slivers. Most of us are actually in the middle. Most of it. But again, I don't bother arguing with this because it's identity and people identify how they want to. And I'm not. It sounds like you're telling people what they should, how they should label themselves, and that's really arrogant, obnoxious thing to do. I'm not interested in doing that. It was this is me coming out of my new atheist phase. I had a brief new agnostic phase, I guess you could call it. I've grown up since then. But I do feel like there's a similar thing there with sexuality, where I think, like, one way of expressing it might be that quite a lot of us are bisexual.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the bisexual
even that doesn't seem to be adequate somehow.
Right.
We're insofar as I can see, we're almost like species unto ourselves. You know, when you get down to brass tacks, we are so unique. In our makeup and so individualistic that whatever we can apply is only surface level. It's aesthetic, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a subject where I'm just not prepared to get into specifics because it's always too personal. But, like, every single person listening to this will be able to think of something that turns them on. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't relate directly to sex as you can imagine it. Like, it doesn't. I'm not talking about anything pornographic, anything. But they'll be able to identify a thing, maybe a smell, maybe a piece of art, maybe an object,
a situation, a setting, an environment,
anything, and it just gets your engine going, and you have no idea why.
No idea.
And you know what? And you don't have to know. If
you don't have to.
All you have to know is it's okay.
It's all right as long as it's not harming anyone.
It's okay that you feel that way, and it's okay if other people don't feel that way.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's it, right? It's bizarre.
And I bet you somewhere there's a website of other people who feel that way.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So go and find your tribe.
I don't think there's any maybe about it at this point, is there? Let's be honest.
And that, like, for me, that's the amount of shame that people go through.
The level of cultural denial.
That's
what gets me. That's what gets me. This like weirdly, simultaneously heterosexualized operating level that we're on, but which is also sanitized, completely sanitized. I just hate that.
Well, and also it is completely sanitized. And then at the other end, you have an incredibly, I mean, and I know, again, there is a spectrum of this, but there is an incredibly powerful dominant strain of pornography that seems to suggest that, you know, all men just want to have very, very rough sex with women, and that's the entirety of what either gender wants. Again, I got, like, if that's what you're into and your partner is into, go with God. It's a narrow slice of the possibilities of spectrums of behavior, even just between men and fucking women. Do you know what I mean? That, like, there's a lot of other possible ways that a man and a woman can enjoy each other's company.
Absolutely,
even in a sexy way that are not those.
And it makes,
I'm not saying those are bad or wrong. I'm just saying there's a lot of, and when that's the only thing that's there,
really problematic as well, isn't it? Because, like, you have these prescriptions of what sexuality is that make people feel inadequate.
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
When they don't like what they're told they should like.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Men who don't like penetrative sex. Happens.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Happens a lot, actually, more so than most people think.
Yeah.
It's really, you know.
I mean, again, and that's the thing about the spectrum, right? You can pick any aspect of human sexuality, and you can find people for whom that is the horniest thing they'll ever do in their entire lives, and you can find people for whom they'd rather cut off their own fucking arms or gouge out their eyes than watch. And that's, but that's fine. That's healthy. That's, if there is such a thing as normal, that is normal. That spectrum, that range, that
variety,
right? And that why that is a cause of. That should be a cause of celebration. That should be a cause of like, look how fucking weird and amazing we are.
Absolutely,
look how fucking bonkers we are. Isn't this great? Look how
far we've abstracted what is ultimately like an evolutionary, just a quirk of evolution,
And instead, what you have is people insisting on getting out a big fucking pen and drawing a box and saying, right, everything in here is okay, and all of this shit out there, they need to be burned at the fucking stake.
It's evil, right?
Right. Is immoral, is corrupting, is destroying. It's like there's a handful of private companies owned by a handful of billionaires that are burning the oil that is going to destroy our entire planet's ecosystem in the next 100 years. That's evil.
Yeah.
Who people want to fuck or not fuck, as long as they're over the age of majority,
or how, or whatever,
consenting, is not evil.
No.
It's none of your
far from it. Yeah. It's what we should be celebrating.
Christ, there's not a lot to enjoy about the next 100 years, but at least we can maybe make each other happy on an one-to-one or many to one, if that's your thing.
It's so interesting to me because, like, it's the dishonesty of it that I find the most amazing thing. Because the vast majority of human beings enjoy and are motivated by sex.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, notwithstanding what you said earlier, which is an important point, which I'll reiterate,
absolutely.
The fact that ace people are kind of grossly underrepresented, and they do exist, and they are real, and their experience is valid. No, absolutely. But and both things are true, right? But that's where I think that's part of where that's where you get this situation where you get this kind of, because that's the other thing, like, we have this sanitized culture, and then we have this absolute like volcano of pornography, right? This kind of like extraordinary like volumes that literally it's kind of this amount of films of people having sex with each other. It's never in human history. Like it's incredible.
Which is how we know, right? It's how we know that this finds expression.
But somehow that's not part of the culture.
Like, right.
Everyone's fucking watching it. So what is that like? And again, that to me, there's the essence of the disease. That's one of the biggest tells, symptoms, flags, whatever you want to call it. Everyone's doing it, and no one's talking about it.
No one wants to acknowledge it. Right?
There is nothing healthy about that.
No, there is not. And yet we will wallow we will allow the sewerage of politics into our lives on a daily basis, on a 24-hour basis. There is so much more that's fetid and poisonous about that than there is in any pornography site.
I just got to the point recently where I realized, like, fundamentally, the thing about modern politics, especially in the UK in 23, and I guess I must with great regret give Starmer credit for this. For me, is just the realization of the extent to which the emperor of democratic politics, in heavy quotation marks, has absolutely no clothes on whatsoever, and kind of never has. It's just, it's enormously clarifying, actually, because you look at the state, then you just, and the reason I bring that up in the context of what you're saying is the reason I think it's resonant is it's exactly that core hypocrisy. And I think maybe it's interesting you make me think of it. Maybe the reason they get away with it is because people look at their own lives and see that separation and think, well, okay, maybe I can't talk but again, that's the false equivalence, right? Because it's like, actually, there's nothing wrong with, again, as long as everyone involved is an adult and giving enthusiastic consent, there's nothing wrong with most of what you see on those films, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to watch whatever it is that's on those films if that's what you want to watch. That's nothing wrong going on there. But because everyone's doing it and nobody's talking about it, therefore there must be something wrong about it. And I think, you look at this, so then when you see these obvious, like, transparent hypocrisies in our political leaders who claim to represent one thing, but then everything they do is going in a different direction, or, and whatever that may be, you think, oh, well, but we're all hypocrites, aren't we? We're all kind of, you know what I mean? And it's
yeah. It allows for the deception, doesn't it? It allows for it gives it space, right?
Right. And it's like, but fucking no, though, because it's not.
It's not normal. It's not normal. Well, it may be normal, but it's not right.
No, it's not. I tell you what, it's not. It's not healthy.
It's not healthy, right? It's insane, and it's why sort of dragging it back in a way. It's why people like Barker and like Billy Martin / Poppy Z. Bright and other writers and artists who are unashamed and unabashed and who acknowledge this hypocrisy are so important.
Yeah, and that's why. And that, again, to bring up something you said earlier, but that puts a neat bow on it. That's why it sometimes feels vaguely pornographic, even though it rarely is in an explicit sense, because it's an expression of something that everyone thinks, but no one's supposed to talk about.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
That's brilliant.
But again, it's as simple as that, but it's also as profound as that.
And as profound as that, yeah. And on that note, Kit, I think we'll draw that one to a close, yeah?
All right, man, yeah.
Brilliant. Wow. That was... I'm going to cut this into two.
At least.
The Hellraiser half and the non-Hellraiser half.
Sure.
But no, that was ace, man. As per usual, Kit, is there anything you'd like to chuck out to the audience out there while we're here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to plug it. We talked about it a little bit in the show, parenthetically. So, My Life in Horror Volume 2.
Yes.
So, recently got a British Fantasy Award nomination for Best Non-Fiction, which is, I can't even begin to tell you.
Brilliant.
Not just a surprise, but a shock, honestly.
This time around, I'm thrilled. There's so many people who I know who are getting these things. The Book of Queer Saints got a nomination.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah. No, I was absolutely thrilled about that.
So what the fuck is going on there? It's brilliant.
Yeah, that means, by the way, you've been nominated. Just want to be clear about that. You can actually say that now. That's the thing. I know.
It's sort of like
because you're in it. So that's wonderful. No, exactly. And I just, if you told me a year ago when I was desperately sweating to get that fucking crowdfunder up and running and get it over the line, that a year later I'd be sitting on a BFS nomination, I frankly wouldn't have believed you. So, so you know what? I'm going to be proud of that. And I'm going to say, go pick that up. If you've enjoyed the conversation you've heard and you want to you want me in a non-fiction format writing about the childhood stuff that freaked me out, doesn't include an essay on Hellbound, but does include a lot of other essays about a lot of other stuff. Go and check it out. My Life in Horror Volume 2. It is British Fantasy Award nominated, and it's available now wherever books are sold. Ebook from Amazon, paperbacks and hardbacks from literally anywhere. Take the ISBN or indeed your local library. So I'll plug that. My podcast feed is Watching Robocop with Kit Power. Not a lot of Watching Robocop going out at the moment. Actually, it's on extended hiatus, but there is a new podcast with James Slater Murphy going through the Bruce Springsteen back catalogue. The pilot episode of that dropped a little while ago, and we're recording the proper episode 1 next week on Greetings to Mastery Park. We're going through in chronological order. Really thrilled to be talking music, something I haven't done enough of for a long time. So if you'd like to hear me talk about music, and specifically Bruce Springsteen, check that out. There's also archival episodes of this very podcast going out on that feed as well, so check those out. And finally, if you would like something new from me every single week for as little as $1 a month, something new in this case could be audio podcast, either early access or exclusive. It could be a review, it could be an essay, or it could be a piece of short or an excerpt from a piece of long fiction. $1 a month, patreon.com/Kit Power will get you something new every single week. That's me.
Brilliant. Again, guys, links to all of that down below. As for myself, you can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy. Loads of fun stuff happening around here. We've got the Books of Blood series, which has been fantastic. That's been loads of fun. Hannibal Digested with our mutual colleagues Elliot Chapman and Jack Graham. That is so much fun. I cannot tell you. My only problem with that one is every time I come to watch the fucking episodes we're talking about, I end up watching the whole fucking series again. Every single time. It's ridiculous. It's the Mads effect. Nice. It's the Mads Mikkelsen effect.
Well, yeah. Pretty
although we have discovered that there's something in Hannibal for everyone. We found at least one character that everyone fancies thus far, so that's great. Yeah.
I haven't got to season 2 yet, so that's not Gillian Anderson.
That's not bad, is it? We're doing all right, considering we're not even on season 2 yet.
Yeah. Because obviously everyone fancies Gillian Anderson. That's a scientific fact.
Come on. I mean,
that's just science.
I mean, my God, have you seen her in it?
Yes, I did get as far as yeah.
Bedelia du Maurier, bloody hell, she's like a Greek goddess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
she's like, doesn't look real.
No, just some kind of platonic ideal of something.
Just aesthetically, just have her on a screen with Mads. I don't need anything else. It's great.
Just staring at each other until the world explodes.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find links to all of my published work over at strangeplaygrounds.com. You can also find it on the Evil Empire of Amazon, of course. As previously mentioned, Book of Queer Saints, which features my short story, The Last Disgrace, was also nominated for a British Fantasy Award, which is really, really cool. That's floating around out there. That's going to be reprinted very soon as well.
That's how well it's done. That's fucking fantastic.
In the run up to the Book of Queer Saints 2, which is coming out this late.
It's coming. Oh
yeah, it's brilliant. In terms of like published fiction that's coming up, if you pop over to Kevin J. Kennedy Productions, there's 2 short story collections that I have short stories coming out in. A collection of kaiju horror stories and a collection of science fiction horror stories.
Oh, excellent.
Both of which have stories of mine in, which is great.
Fantastic stuff, man. Brilliant.
Dead pleased. Honestly, the one I sent to the kaiju one, I didn't think that was an experiment. I didn't think that would get anywhere, so I'm dead pleased.
Oh, that's wonderful. No,
that's I've never written a kaiju story before, so that was nice. That was fun,
Yeah.
And I think that's largely it for me as well.
Right.
Excellent. Well, Kit, thank you so much, man. It's been lovely catching up.
Thank you too. Yeah. Oh, and as you were just as closing, but as you were saying, like with Hannibal, I have finally started my rewatch of season 4 of Sons of Anarchy. So
yes,
let's get that one. Get the mothballs for that.
Oh my God, I was thinking about that. I was singing the song from the end earlier when I was working. So
I think season 4 might be my favourite. Of the whole run. So I'm looking forward to talking about that.
We've got to pick that up again. We really do. Really do. Well, my loves, thank you so much for listening to us, and we'll be back very soon. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye.